And there's another thing that you got to get through once you get you select your schools. You got to get through the interview. So you applied to 10 schools. Tell us how many interviews you got and what the interview days were like. Any special questions that were like, oh my God, I don't believe they just asked me this question. Were there any of those? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so out of the 10 schools that I applied to, I received 5 interviews. I received interviews from Harry, Tufts, the school in Arizona, and then USC and University of the Pacific. And so I ended up only doing 3 of them because I had actually got my acceptance from Tufts first. And so for me, I was like, I don't need to do all these interviews and take up spots for other people when I have, I have one school under my belt, a school that, I really respect and that I, had support at. And so I ended up doing the interview at USC and University of the Pacific. The Tufts and the USC were virtual. The one in at University of the Pacific was actually in San Francisco, which was a nice experience. But like I said before, I was so or I was telling Dr. Darwin before, I was so like concerned on what they were gonna ask me, and like everyone always told me it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue. Like as long as you know yourself and you know what you're about and what you bring to the table, then it'll be a dialogue. And so in my Tufts interview, which was my first one, she just asked me about like, who am I? That was probably the first question is, so like, who are you and why dentistry? Um, and so nailing down that was key. And then from there on, it was really just about, one, what was your undergrad experience like? What kind of things did you learn? And how do you feel like, or what do you feel like you'll be able to bring to our school? And so those were like the questions that I would say really guided the rest of the interview. It really was a dialogue, and I know that's probably not the answer that a lot of people want to hear, but like just know yourself, know why dentistry, and really know yourself. What are your passions? What do you care about? And be expressive of that, and make sure that they at the end of the day they feel like they know who you are, even though it may be through a screen. Make sure they feel like they know who you are and how you can fit into their environment and what you're gonna
Yeah.
bring.
So share, your experience with the DAT, how you prepped for it, and any tips that you have for people who are getting ready to take it maybe next week, or they schedule their time a month from now. How did you prepare for the DAT?
Yeah, so for me, the DAT, I started with DAT boot camp. I purchased that, and I would go. Well, I always had two study sessions. I would have one in the morning early, probably around like 6 or 7 o'clock. I get up, go study for 2 or 3 hours, and then go about my day. And then later on, I would come back and study again. But I would I would always one have a schedule, and then two, I had DAT boot camp, and so I would print off all the notes, print out every single worksheet that they had and the practice problems. So I'm going through the different online portions as well that they have for you, almost like the lessons that are supplemented with, like I said, the notes that I printed off. And so I would go through the lessons and then review, and then do some practice questions. Um, and I would try and divvy up the time between each section. But of course, because the sciences are so large, that often took the bulk of my time where I didn't focus as much on the PAT section, which is the perceptual ability test. So kind of like trying to identify what a shape would look like three-dimensionally without seeing the whole shape. And so between that and the math section, the quantitative reasoning is what it's called officially. Those two sections I didn't spend as much time on as I would have liked. But the bulk of everything is that science section. So I was always focusing on that. And I actually took the DAT twice. The first time I want to say I took the DAT in the summer. It was a summer test. No. First test was actually I want to say it was a December test. No, it was. I'm sorry. It was that summer test. And that was my first one. My second one I took in December of 2021 before graduating in 2022. But yeah, so that, if you're not ready, I would say, for the DAT, you can always push your test back. It does cost the closer you get to your date, but if you're not prepared, do not take your test. You just save yourself.
Be prepared. Be prepared. Right?
That's
As an applicant, your number one job is to get into dental school. That includes the DAT, preparing for the DAT. Even science majors have to prepare for the DAT.
Yep.
Right. Even though everybody wants to be a dentist, there's also, it can be challenging, it can be difficult, and which can deter a lot of people from applying to dental school. Tell us what has been, or what was the hardest part for you about applying to dental school?
Yeah, so I would say, in terms of applying to dental school, the hardest part is probably your undergrad experience. I would say, yeah, your undergrad experience is definitely probably your hardest part. Those classes, those orgo-chemistry classes, the general chemistry classes, the cell bios, the harder biochem classes. I think those are all probably the hardest part in your matriculation in getting to dentistry. But I would say, in terms of the application process, the hardest part is probably trying to organize all of the essays that you have, your personal statement, and getting that together. And just trying to tweak the essays to, one, fit the word count, and also get what you have to say in at the same time. But yeah, then also just keeping track of them all and making sure they all get the proper attention that they need when you're still trying to do your other parts of your application, and you have other things just going on in general. I would say the essays can get a little bit crazy, especially if you're applying to a lot of schools. But the hardest part you'll find is definitely that those 4 years before you go to dental school. But if you buckle down, I think that you'll find yourself at ease when it comes to that application process.
Right. So the hardest part being preparing for those 4 years, or those 4 years of preparing for making sure you have all the prerequisites.
Yes.
Got it. Next assignment is go to the next video. Go to the next video right now. Go. Love, peace, and smiles. Go to the next video. Go to the next video.